Hey, South Bay. I'm Jeff Pollard at solarpowerthepeople.org and Jeff Pollard11 on Instagram. Once again, I am with Adam and Isabel.
Hello.
And we're going to continue our story, the epic adventure of how they went to like the most northern parts of North America.
Well, I mean, it's the great North American road trip,
Okay.
self-described. It's we went over all these northernmost parts, but the whole idea of this trip is to get to the most outermost parts of the continent, the whole continent. Possible, with really the only limitation of didn't feel ready to drive into Mexico yet. That's a whole lot of logistics and figuring out that I not quite comfortable yet, but very much have the goal to do.
Multiple countries can be stressful. So,
Canada's easy enough. No language barrier. I mean, I got decent Spanish, but you know.
No, I hear you. So this is a many parts, and this is technically 6, and they started in Southern California, where we're at, and went up to Alaska to the northern parts of Canada, and now we're on the East Coast on day 50.
Day 50, we just spent a couple days in New York, and like I said, it's not all north. From here, we're heading south.
Okay.
First thing we do, we leave town, we hit up my favorite sandwich place in the entire world. Strong praise. It's called Milburn Deli in a town called in Milburn, New Jersey.
Okay.
And it's so darn good.
Easy enough.
Yeah,
All right.
if you're ever in that area, just do it.
What was the sandwich choice there that you guys got?
There's a sandwich called the Godfather, which has like a chicken cutlet, some Thousand Island, but they call it Russian dressing because it's the East Coast.
Okay.
Some mozzarella, it's just a good hearty sandwich, but they have everything there. It is the Mecca
And Isabel?
of sandwiches.
I got something called the Gobbler, which they're famous for.
Oh,
when you
yeah.
order it, they ring this bell to let everyone know that it's been ordered. And it's basically just a Thanksgiving sandwich. It's fantastic.
Which I'm usually not even a fan of a Thanksgiving sandwich, but oh my god.
The
Okay,
stuffing's
yeah.
just moist. Everything is fantastic.
And then a little shout out, Rinaldi's in the South Bay in the Redondo Torrance area. They make a good Godfather too. But that's just, that's just because I like to support local too. So
No,
that's us.
absolutely. If you're local, support local. If you're on the East Coast, go to Milburn Deli.
And visit when you're traveling.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're in the States.
Yeah, we're
we're
headed-
familiar turf.
This is a lot more familiar than I'm not
Yeah.
having to explain what Nova Scotia is
Yeah,
at this
okay.
point. Like, we're driving through New Jersey, we go through Delaware, we go through Maryland, we cross the Chesapeake Bay on a bunch of bridges. That's awesome.
Toll
Super
bridges,
cool.
because I do want to give people tips. So prepare to pay kind of bridges.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh God, yeah.
Especially Delaware.
Yeah,
I
no,
can't understand.
Delaware is right. I mean, this whole stretch of the East Coast is horrific with its tolls. Actually, a funny story. When we were up in Alaska, we were talking with this one couple from Baltimore,
Yep.
I believe.
Yep.
And
Moving up
they
there to Alaska.
moving up to Alaska, and
Oh,
they
how
were
funny.
shocked how they didn't have to pay any tolls.
Because they were going up there and they had on Google Maps, avoid toll roads. So for
Yeah.
some reason, Google Maps thought that all roads, because they were from Baltimore, had tolls. So it was taking them on all these back roads and everything. They finally said enough is enough, and they finally went on the highway. And they were like, "Wow, it's really well maintained. When do we pay tolls? Because how else is it maintained?" And we had to break the news to them that tolls.
There aren't tolls like west of Illinois. Really?
They didn't understand.
I know.
That was an interesting culture shock.
Be grateful, California.
Seriously,
West
the
Coast.
Northeast is
Yeah.
just offensively bad with its toll.
I was
Your
gonna
tax
say
dollars are
tolls
working.
are
Yeah.
okay.
But yeah, worked our way through Maryland. Eventually got ourselves into Virginia, which is the only state in America where you're not allowed to use a radar detector in your car. So we had to turn that bad boy off for a little bit. We spent the night in Richmond, Virginia, which on our last road trip through the East Coast, Izzy had been like, we'd been passing. It's like, what a beautiful city. Let's stop there next time. So we did. It is a beautiful city. It's a really strongly revitalizing city. We had a ridiculously good dinner there. It's a place called Soul Taco. And what they do is they put soul food in tacos.
Oh,
Because, like,
okay.
of course
Fusion.
that's going to be good. Yeah. So there's some more, like, taco-y tacos, but then there's more, like, just soul food in a tortilla.
I do like that.
And, like, that's all I need to say, right? Like, that just works.
Can we have a hint of what this soul food type food was in these two?
Ooh, there was, like,
Catfish.
there's a catfish, there's a fried chicken one, like a Mississippi stew kind of one, just... Yeah. Oh God, it was so good. I would go back there in a second.
No, I like that.
Yeah,
I've
I mean,
never
build
even
up the
heard.
places
Yeah.
to eat along the I-95 corridor, so you're not stopping at all the, McDonald's and Subways of the world.
And so, real quick, obviously, watch the other parts just so you have a strong idea of the adventures they went on. Just very quickly explain like the entire kind of trip. You went up West Coast. Alaska.
Yeah, went up the West Coast all the way up to the Arctic Ocean in Alaska, down to southern Alaska, then strongly east across 12 out of 13 of Canada's provinces and territories, ending up in the easternmost spot of the continent, Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And the easternmost spot of Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And then working my way south from there. So it was like a, north along the West Coast, then east, and now we're working south, just the biggest box you can do on the continent.
Full
Have a
clock
globe,
journey.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Well, that should be helpful.
So, we're starting around Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Let's get the bar out of the way.
That is
Good
a
thinking.
Good idea.
All right, so I'm just going to stand up so I can do this. So we're starting
Isabel.
around Los Angeles. We trekked our way up, all the way up, then down to the Kenai Peninsula, then across Canada. This is a rough tracing here. We kind of popped up a little bit to the bay here, and then across to Newfoundland. So once we were in Newfoundland, we came back to the mainland, and now we're working our way down here. The end goal is to go all the way down to Key West.
Spoiler alert.
I'll get there then. But yeah, so we've done all this trekking across this amazing continent that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I have it in my notes that we've driven further than the radius of the planet Uranus.
Okay.
Just a gas giant
Huge.
out there. So we're getting to 16,000 miles, and we're still on the East Coast.
I love it.
So just to give a sense of that
Yeah.
kind of sheer distance we're talking about.
Right.
Multiple
So
times.
Yeah, what I was just saying was day 50, moving on to day 51,
Okay.
which is July 29th. We left June 9th, something like that, so it is well into the trip
And this day
at
we
this
have been
point.
really looking forward to the
Yeah.
dinner that we have waiting for us in the evening. We'll get to that. But just
That's the
it's
whole
one
point of the day.
highlights.
It's the whole point of the
Okay.
day, was our favorite barbecue, capital F favorite barbecue.
tier.
all the
place.
letters were capitalized. All right.
Yeah, it is called Southern Soul Barbecue in a place called St. Simon's Island, Georgia. It's a lovely little coastal island just north of the Florida-Georgia border.
Okay. Now,
And it
did
is-
you do a car ferry, or is this just a regular
Just
one?
drive.
Oh yeah,
Or
there's
you
just
drove-
little,
oh, there's
yeah,
a bro-
little,
okay.
yeah. There's one big bridge, bunch of little bridges.
Okay.
It's a very popular like tourist destination, and
Beautiful there.
yeah.
Okay.
But you do drive because you have to cross these bridges to get there, and you think, oh God, this is all gonna flood soon.
Yeah.
It's
You would not want to be
low.
there during a hurricane because it is low and flat and wet.
But you guys
But
were
Sure.
there.
oh my god, I would drive there in a hurricane for this barbecue. I got there, I was so excited. The person at the counter just like kept trying to upsell me, and I was such a sucker for it. They were like, "Oh, you know what else is really good? Is you should
Right.
throw in the rib tips and also the brisket chili, and I'm like, yeah."
I'm hungry. You got me.
Fast forward to me just being absolutely destroyed in the parking lot. I'm
never
just
seen you
trying
so
not to
sick.
get sick. I'm just sitting there. I'm literally counting. I'm just saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my god, it was worth it though. It is just the best barbecue, hands down.
You know what I liked about the cartoon, the Boondocks? You know, they had an episode with the itis. You know, people just getting that food coma, and I just always loved adopting that kind of the itis. So yeah, but yeah.
I mean, you know, there was a whole drive to get there. We went through the Carolinas, went through Georgia. Didn't stop too much though. We stopped for lunch at one of my favorite kind of regional chains in the Southeast called Bojangles, which has darn good chicken. So a little bit of fast food. This is like one of our first kind of actual fast food stops on the trip.
Okay.
But it's regional fast food. It's something you can't get here, so I don't count that as good too.
It's kind of like on In-N-Out level, Raising Cane's level, where it's fast food, but it's fast food.
Yeah.
No, I hear you.
But the real point of the whole day, get our barbecue at in St. Simon's Island. Stay over. It's a gorgeous spot, gorgeous weather while we're there.
What are you stopping for? Like, what are you seeing? What are because we're in the U.S. We're in city areas, so like
here,
what
honestly, a lot less
see?
Because here the vast majority of the day I was just driving down the I-95, which is for us West Coasters the equivalent of driving up the 5. So it's like, oh, what do you see on the way to San Francisco, Oregon? It's like, well, I don't know, I'm just driving on the freeway. So I got to be honest, there's a lot of things to see in the Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia, all these places.
Yeah.
This day, we were driving on the I-95 corridor, which may as well be the I-5, which, you know, it's...
But like the I-5, like flat and like that, because at least with North Carolina, I was impressed with just seeing the lush trees when you're driving.
Yeah, it's very foresty and lush.
So that difference.
There's a couple things you see along the route. One very embarrassing thing is between North Carolina and South Carolina, there's this place called South of the Border with horrifically offensive advertising.
Terrible history.
Just like way back.
Low-key human
60s,
trafficking?
yeah, it was bad. Like, the more you read, the worse it gets. And the signs are just like, especially as someone who lives in Southern California, like, just jaw-droppingly racist.
I want to say my NC North Carolina friend always said it's South Carolina that's got the. Well, look, we don't know. But yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, look, south of the border.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, look it up. It's pretty cringe-inducing at the very least.
Better yet, don't. There's no need to. It's okay.
Now, you know, when you're on a freeway, this is a little tidbit I do want to say. When I've traveled on the East Coast on a freeway, people are kind of going slower, and you're going, oh, is that like a small town vibe thing or something? So our system in California, we actually have a good signage system where we will tell you, like, 3 miles ahead is your exit. Not so much, you know, and I don't want to speak for all of it, but there were parts where I went to where I'm like, oh, and there was our exit. You know, and that was the only warning. So, like, when you're traveling and you're a first-timer, like, you're either going to drive slow, know your exit, but you might pass.
Use your GPS for sure,
but sometimes when we try to, you know, GPS signaling, all that stuff. But yeah, it's just one of those where, like, if you want to, like, turn off your phone or whatever, so I just want to say that. Just be very mindful that they don't give you terribly good amounts of warnings that you're exiting.
And on that, too, especially if we're going on, advice on the East Coast, careful driving in Virginia especially. We didn't get pulled over, but we got, like, warnings from locals of just like they can pull you over for any reason, they'll ticket you, like they are, the whole South is pretty notorious for that, but there's certainly areas, Texas is one, but Virginia certainly is another, but because you will see on the I-95 Yahoo's just going, but there will be, just like some family in the left lane going like 60 and then some like yahoos in the slow lane dodging the trucks going 95.
It's a little unhinged. I felt the least safe around this corridor in terms of driving that and honestly Florida. Which
the whole I-95 corridor can be sketchy. It's all the East Coasters like going down to their Disney World vacations. All these East Coasters who like live in these cities where they don't usually have to drive and be on the freeway all that much. All of a sudden road tripping and you're having to deal with their lack of understanding. So
but long story
watch yourself
short,
out there.
Yeah, they're just as crazy as us. So we have our issues too.
More so. We're great out here.
Order out here, It's like people will
lane discipline. We're pretty good at out here. Pretty good at.
See, like they'll cut in front of you, but they'll kind of check first, Versus out here, they will cut ahead of you, and you better be slamming on your brakes because they will be in that spot and momentarily.
They will hip
There's-
check you.
Yeah.
There's at least some semblance of order out here, especially when you go around traveling around other places.
Yeah.
You start to see, okay, we do have a serious car culture in LA. People respect certain levels of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another side tidbit. Please visit either San Francisco or Arizona. I went to Arizona in the Phoenix area and got to drive for the Waymo company. A little shout out. And it was a self-driving car. Autonomous.
wow.
Fully autonomous.
Wow.
So I got a taste of just being in a car, no driver. Anyway, just
That's
talking about
cool.
cars. It was crazy.
I don't trust that yet.
No.
Maybe in about 10 years I might trust that.
I'll say-
I'm glad there's some people willing to be guinea pigs for that technology right now.
No, for sure. And I'll say it was super smooth, but if
Okay.
you want like a taste of like kind of feeling like you're in the future, you know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
no,
Not
I
like
bet.
that
That's
transition
gotta be awesome.
where all of a sudden you're just like, oh, there's robot. You know what I mean? You felt it. It's like you will actually have that kind of feeling of like this feels futuristic.
That's
like,
cool.
really
That's
cool.
cool.
So, but no, I hear you with the trust. But yeah, cool. So drivers are crazy. It looks like we're going down to Florida.
Day 52, July 30th. Yeah, we're getting into Florida. The drivers don't get any better.
I am curious about Florida.
You are?
Yeah, because Florida obviously always gets like they're like the total freedom people, but you also get very colorful people. And yeah, just tell me anything about
It's
So,
pretty chaotic driving.
I-
It's good roads, but yeah, go for
Yeah,
it.
I actually spent a lot of my time in my childhood going there because my
Awesome.
grandparents lived there and
Oh,
had
awesome.
since about the 60s. So
May
my
we ask
fam-
where?
They grew up. My mom was born in Miami. Then
Yeah.
they moved to Tampa, and then they moved to Boca Raton. And I remember in my childhood, it wasn't as built up as when we visited.
Okay.
So I remember going in their backyard, and they just had this forest, this huge forest, and they're like
cool.
acres of forest.
Yeah.
And now going through, it's just this built-up beach city.
Yeah.
So I kept telling Adam, this isn't the Florida I remember. I remember
Especially the east, like that is
It's
the most
gotten
built
built
up.
up.
Yeah.
because my childhood was like 20 years ago. But the Florida I remember, and the Florida you do find on the west side and the southern tips, you have, the Everglades, you have these beautiful beaches where you look and you see, sand dollars, you see horseshoe crabs, you see the ocean is alive, you see sand traps with sand lions in it. Everywhere you look, it's alive. It's special. It's marshy. It's not meant to be built up. And so when you find these pockets where it's relatively untouched, you start to see what people mean when they say Florida is special.
Okay.
There's no place
That's a
really
good
like
introduction
it.
to the state, because I was about to say so much, especially driving through like the Atlantic coast of Florida. It's a giant orange county. I mean, it's all these,
Really?
like it's new developments,
Okay.
just built upon built. There's, you up north, even in the I-95, you're driving through a bunch of nature. When you're driving through Florida, you're barely pockets of nature between the growing, sprawling urban centers. Not to say that's ugly or anything, but it's definitely a place in rapid change.
Yeah.
And it's also, Florida is alive, and so when people are building these developments and trying to pave things over, you can't really fight the earth there because there's limestone, and so you're creating sinkholes, you're creating issues. It's just being able to experience what it's like for people to try and battle nature and failing in the end. That's what it feels like visiting Florida. It's also this really beautiful multicultural place because you have people coming from all over. It's a major hub because it's so beautiful. And
We
people
finally
know it.
got down to good Mexican food in Florida, which was something we were just not getting in Canada.
Oh my gosh.
So
it
I mean,
was.
as a Southern Californian, it's just like I need my taco fix.
Yeah.
And going through all of Canada, you just weren't getting it, and then finally you hit Florida, and the quality hits again.
Okay.
And that's nice. So you're getting more into that Latin American culture that,
Exactly.
as a Californian, I'm used to.
Well,
But it
don't
is
forget Cuba.
different in
Yeah.
Florida. You get a lot more of Caribbean and South American
Yeah.
influence, where it's a lot more predominantly of Mexican influence in California.
So we have to talk about, even though it wasn't during this day, we have to talk about Mrs. Potato.
That's the next day. You're all...
Oh my goodness!
Or a couple days from now.
It's been a while since we've been on the trip, but I am excited to tell you all
We got
about
some
this
great
one
tacos
place.
this day. We also visited my grandma this day, which was
So your
quite
grandma's
nice.
here too?
My grandma's in Florida.
And her grandparents from... That's fine.
Yeah, well,
That's awesome.
lots of grandparents in Florida.
Oh my god, the Golden Girls.
Yeah, we kept on going down the coast. We ended up in Miami Beach that evening. I have a decent amount of family in Florida, so I visited my grandma in North Florida, and then had dinner with my cousin in South Florida. We had some more tacos. We were pretty much insatiable for tacos at this point. We stayed at a beautiful hotel right on Miami Beach.
Yeah.
That was actually owned by Gloria Estefan, so that's kind of cool. There's a bunch of portraits of her around.
Okay.
So we stayed in her boutique hotel, which I didn't even know we were going to.
Nice.
But I mean, right on Miami Beach. It's very touristy. It is similar to, like, you know, tourists coming into LA and spending time in Hollywood kind of thing. But I mean, if you're gonna be in Miami for a night, that's a good place to be.
The architecture is insane in this
Absolutely.
area. Beautiful Art Deco architecture. But it was wild going up to our room and all of a sudden just coming face to face with this giant portrait, like magazine photo shoot.
Larger than life.
Of
Gloria Estefan.
And then I looked to the right, and then there's another portrait just of her again. It's just the hotel is just filled with pictures of her, which makes sense, you know. But it was a really
You get to
wild
do that
experience.
if you own a hotel in Miami Beach. I would do that too.
See, I would go a step further. I would have my hotel room, and then where the bed is, the ceiling would just be a picture of me. So,
Yeah, right.
So she's right there. Now, how can people prepare? So, you know, when we think of like the U.S., I feel like there's always like, okay, Texas is their own culture, California, New Yorkers, I mean even Jersey, you know. So what can we expect? What are the Florida people like? Because I want to visit Florida.
There's so many different places. So. I mean, Miami is its own urban center that's very Cuban. Late. It's very kind of island time kind of thing. I mean, also with late, I think you're probably saying that it's like, clubs and stuff aren't going to even get going until like midnight, 2 a.m. kind of thing. Like, it is a party metropolis in a way that you just don't see in very many other places. And then there's like, you know, Jacksonville and Tallahassee, which are just very like deep south kind of places. Orlando is just kind of corporation world.
Yeah, I heard they might as well call it Disneyland or something.
You may as well. They own more Orlando than Orlando does, pretty much. And then there's, you know, Western Florida, that's a bunch more natural. Tampa, there's the Everglades. And so there's a lot of places in the country where it's, you know, a state's very one note, you know. Nebraska, it's flat, there's fields. One side of Nebraska looks like the other side of Nebraska. But then there's places like California. California is the ultimate example of a very diverse state. But Florida's up there. Is what I want to say. It's definitely up there in terms of you can drive a couple hours, you feel like you're in a different place. I mean, even Texas, you drive for a couple hours, you're very much still in Texas. It's a very diverse place as well, but it's very much Texas. Florida, that's kind of cool. Like it's one of those places where you can seek out what you want. There is appeal in Florida, you know. Us Californians like to poop on Florida as much as we can for a lot of good reason, but also it is a cool place to visit, legitimately.
Well, and that's why, you know, I kind of wanted to briefly talk about this, because I don't go anywhere going, oh, these are terrible people or whatever, you know. So I just like, I'm always like, I'm tired of hearing why it's this way or that way. So I would love to hear what you gave us, two people that just give us an explanation of what a state's like. And so that's very much appreciative. But yeah, so it's just like, all right, so you went down. What was the weather like? Are we all set in like high humidity areas?
Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's an oven. Like the especially during the summer. This was July 30th. The air turns into like hot mayonnaise soup.
You
And you never
could
fully
taste the air.
You're never fully dry either.
Okay.
It is a bit unpleasant if that's not your thing.
That's why I always laughed about. So like it's known for like New Yorkers or East Coasters to move south,
The
and that's
snowbirds.
like their like migration thing.
Yeah.
Which always like cracks me up because it's like harsh snows, and then they go into this like humidity thing. Because California, we don't have that shift,
Right.
So we have no idea what they're talking
spoiled.
about. Yeah,
We're
it's
very
just so
spoiled.
funny that it's like, well, you're going into like one misery to another. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Which is that whole,
I don't know.
like,
That's the East Coast to me. That's why I say West Coast, best coast. Just saying.
But
Also,
we'll say this:
another-
you are tougher. That's why.
Another cool thing about this trip was connecting the landscapes of everything. So
Yes.
before the trip, things were kind of segmented, but then we kind of realized, we were able to connect, the Appalachian like mountain range. Florida and the surrounding areas of that south are actually the floodplains of this ancient mountain system. So especially when you look at old maps and really connect, the geography of how all of these areas have formed, you get a greater appreciation for the place you're visiting. So Florida initially in my brain was like, okay, there's sinkholes, it's this kind of sandy area, but I didn't really understand why. And being able to understand why and connect it to the whole continent rather than just the U.S. Because, you look at maps, it's just the U.S. You don't really see maps of North America as much.
Yeah.
That was really a part of the special part of the trip. So being able to visit these places, because we were familiar with the East Coast. We tried doing this trip the year prior. Being able to get a greater understanding and greater appreciation for these places. That was definitely the special part of the trip and the whole goal of the Great North American Road Trip.
Yeah.
I wish that would have been like our finisher, to be honest, because that's just like a great way to like kind of say like traveling. Nothing. Word of mouth is always fun, I guess, but like to see it
You
yourself.
have to see it.
You know what I mean? Just to be like, okay,
Because then it feels more real. I mean,
Yeah.
you see something on a TV and that's cool, but
Yeah.
then you're actually driving through it is a entirely different experience.
Like, I'm tired of like, you hear about Jersey and you go, oh, it's going to be like a bunch of Jersey Shore people or mafia people. And it's like, I'm meeting like awesome New Yorkers, Jersey people.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like crazy like that. Okay, I kind of want you to comically represent Florida. Why is it that, because you mentioned it a little bit earlier where it's like they'll build on something that shouldn't be built on. Why do they keep building it? It's a hurricane area. The houses get demolished and they just want to keep the...
It all started in the
It'll
early
make money
20th
short
century.
time. Yeah, short term it makes so much money. That's why.
It all started
Simple as that.
in the early 20th century with Florida. Before California, they were trying to build up that area to be the major movie hub. And it
That's
was
Hollywood,
starting to
right?
be that. I mean, all those silent movies were filmed in Florida.
Okay.
And so land was cheap. There was a huge rush of people who wanted nicer weather, and they were able to buy these huge swaths of land. But it still wasn't quite popular, because it was a harder form of living, everything, it's alive. But then it started becoming really developed, especially after Disney moved in, and companies were able to make a lot of money. There were tax breaks and everything, and there were more lax laws around what you could do. So you could just pave over an entire area. Whether or not that was good long term wasn't even thought about because money. You could make a lot of money from these East Coasters who want a warmer way of living and they want to buy a cheap house, and especially with the snowbirds, they're not going to live all that long, unfortunately. They're not going to be there for like 50 years.
That is another thing, is you do have an elderly population who are looking at more, short-term stability. So yeah, you can pave over that swamp for now, and that's going to work for now until it doesn't, but that's someone else's problem.
You guys like rolling the dice.
Yeah.
What city? Isn't there a city like that has like Hollywood Street or a city?
There's a Hollywood, Florida.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
Hollywood,
absolutely.
Florida, like a city, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that was a name that was brought over from the East Coast.
Yeah, Hollywood. Yeah, you break it down and it's a little bit more kind of woodsy.
Yeah,
But,
Brentwood. All these wood names were brought over when California was trying to market itself as a place where East Coasters would want to come. It was a really big pull, because people didn't really want to come to California, for until, you know, it became popular. They really developed it and tried doing the same thing they tried doing with Florida. In fact, this is a little side tangent, but the El Camino Real was actually created as a way to get people who are moving from the East Coast to visit more places in California.
It's
and
pure
to
marketing
create
thing.
A sense of history, because at that point,
It was marketing the 101 freeway.
Yeah.
It wasn't an ancient Spanish route or anything.
They
It
were
was
all in
marketing the
disrepair.
101 freeway,
Yeah.
literally.
They were all in disrepair. No one cared about these missions. They were just a relic of the past, and as they should be. But yeah, all that kind of what we have here in California started on the East Coast and was brought over by East Coasters trying to market a place.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, dig
So
it.
yeah, you really see that in
I
Florida.
mean,
It's
hence
their
why
cousins.
like Orange County is very similar to Florida. It's that kind of new development, new development in paradise kind of aesthetic. Yeah,
Dig it.
They're cousins.
Very much
both
so.
Florida and California.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with that.
yeah.
All right, so we're at the Keys
Day
now?
53. So this is the last pre-planned day of the trip. I planned to get to the northernmost point, to get to the easternmost point, and to get to the southernmost point.
Okay.
And that's what you get at the end of Key West. There's a huge thing, southernmost point of the contiguous United States, 90 miles to Havana. From that spot, it is a gorgeous drive through the Keys where you're just like on and off these islands, on and off these bridges. There's one bridge that's 7 miles long over the waters there.
That's cool.
And it is gorgeous. And you're seeing a bunch of houses like up on stilts too, because they're
Okay,
right on the
yeah.
beach in the middle of the Gulf, like in the middle of hurricane paths completely. But Key West is cool. Key West is a cool town that is absolutely worth visiting and absolutely worth driving to. A lot of people fly in, but that drive through the Keys, I've heard it's tedious for a lot of the locals because it's like, you know, a good 3 hours from Miami, so they feel like they're out in the middle of nowhere. And you do get that feeling that you're on the edge of the world here.
But that's what you want
but
to
that's
savor.
cool.
The opportunity
That and the
to
tropics, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's so nice. And amazing food in Key West. Garbo's Grill, so good. Of course you got to get Cuban food. We went to a place called El Siboney.
Okay.
It was so good because of course it's going to be so good, but it just is.
Coffee, good.
It's such a walkable city too. I mean, you can walk from the Atlantic to the Gulf on either side of the island.
Okay.
There.
I love
I don't know. There's a million people who can tell you how cool Key West is.
Yeah.
Like that's one that people know, I think.
Okay. Do you
So-
go in the water at all in terms of like actually?
Little
swim
bit. It's
or anything?
very seaweedy. The beach is down there, and
Last
especially
time it
there
wasn't.
was last year in 2021 it wasn't as much, but I think there was like some storm that had just passed or something that just deposited a bunch of seaweed on the beach, like piles of it and everything. So it wasn't the most appealing, but
Hey everybody, guess what? I wrote an illustrated children's book. I am super excited for this. It's a great book, so please support, please buy, please do whatever you feel like doing. The Giraffe and the Lion. Find it anywhere. Thanks everybody.